All right, get ready to fire up those grills, because today we're diving deep into the world of yakiniku.
That's right, Japanese barbecue for anyone who hasn't joined us on this culinary adventure before.
Exactly. We're taking a look at this awesome article from Brutus magazine, all about the different cuts of meat you might find on a yakiniku menu.
Oh, it's fascinating stuff. They actually break down 18 different cuts.
18 cuts, that's a lot to get through.
It is. It really gives you a sense of the variety and nuance that goes into this style of cooking.
So how do we even begin to tackle 18 different cuts? Where do we even start?
Well, I think it helps to use the cow itself as a guide.
Okay, like a virtual butcher shop tour.
Exactly. Imagine we're walking through a butcher shop, pointing out the different cuts and explaining why they're special for yakiniku.
I like it. Let's start with the familiar area, the rump.
Perfect. The rump, or ramp as it's called in yakiniku, is a great place to begin because it's lean but still flavorful.
So it's a good intro cut for people who might be new to yakiniku.
Absolutely. It gives you a solid foundation for understanding how different parts of the cow yield different tastes and textures.
Okay, ramp noted. What's next on our bovine adventure?
Let's move up to the shoulder area. There's a cut there called Misusu that I think you'll find particularly interesting.
Misusu. Okay, I'm intrigued. What's so special about this cut?
Well, for starters, it's pretty rare. They only get about 1 to 2 kilos of Misusu from each cow.
Wow, less than 5 pounds from a whole cow.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. What makes it so rare?
It's all about the location and structure. Misusu comes from a very specific part of the shoulder, and it has this beautiful line of fat running through it. It's like a one-character line, as they say in Japanese.
Okay, so not only is it rare, but it sounds visually stunning too.
It is, and that line of fat isn't just for show. It renders beautifully on the grill, basting the meat and giving it this incredible richness.
I'm already sold on the Misusu. Where are we headed next?
Let's stick with the shoulder for a moment and talk about another cut called zabuton.
Zabuton. Like the cushions?
Exactly.
Yeah.
They call it zabuton because it's supposed to be incredibly soft and pillowy.
Ah, I see. So we're going from lean with the ramp to more of a melt-in-your-mouth experience with the zabuton.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And the zabuton is known for its beautiful marbling, which contributes to that melt-in-your-mouth texture.
Okay, we've got the ramp, the Misusu, and the zabuton, all from different parts of the cow. What other premium cuts are we looking at?
Well, we can't talk about premium cuts without mentioning the sirloin.
Ah, the sirloin. King of cuts.
It definitely has a regal reputation.
I once heard a story that King Henry VIII knighted a piece of sirloin because he loved it so much.
That sounds about right. Sirloin has been a prized cut for centuries.
So what makes sirloin so special in the world of yakiniku?
It comes from the loin, and it has this perfect balance of tenderness and rich flavor. It's often considered the most premium cut for grilling.
All right, so we've got the ramp, the Misusu, the zabuton, and now the sirloin. Anything else hiding in this section of the cow?
There's one more cut from the loin that I think you'll find interesting. It's called harami.
Harami. I've definitely seen that on yakiniku menus before. What's the story with that one?
Well, prepare yourself for a bit of a curveball. Harami is actually a diaphragm muscle.
Wait, so it's not technically a meat?
It's considered offal.
Wow. I had no idea. I've had harami before and never knew it was awful.
It's a very popular cut in yakiniku, and for good reason. It's incredibly flavorful and has a nice chew to it.
Okay, so harami, technically awful, but still a star player in the yakiniku world. What other awful cuts does this article mention?
It actually dives pretty deep into the world of offal, and I think you'll be surprised by how approachable some of these cuts are.
I'm all ears. What kind of awful adventures are we about to embark on?
Oh, remember Mino, the first stomach of the cow?
Yes, we touched on that earlier.
There's a particular type of Mino called Mino sand that I think is a great gateway cut for people who are hesitant about offal.
Mino sand. What makes that one stand out?
It's from a specific section of the first stomach that's known for being particularly fatty. So you get that melt-in-your-mouth quality that can win over even the most skeptical eaters.
Okay, Mino sand noted. And what about awful options beyond the stomach?
There's marucho, which comes from the small intestine.
Small intestine. Okay, now we're getting adventurous.
The way they prepare it is really unique. They leave it uncut and turn it inside out.
Inside out. Why do they do that?
It creates this really interesting texture and concentrates the flavor. When you grill it, you get this juicy explosion that's unlike anything else.
Sounds a bit messy, but delicious.
Definitely a memorable experience.
So we've covered some really interesting cuts so far. What else has this article got us thinking about?
Well, it's fascinating because it doesn't just focus on how these cuts taste. They also emphasize the visual appeal.
Ah, so it's about the whole presentation too.
Exactly, like they describe the liver as the red jewel of yakiniku.
Red jewel. That's beautiful.
It is. It reminds you that yakiniku is an experience for all the senses. The sizzle, the aroma, the visual presentation.
It all comes together to create something really special.
Exactly. It's a culinary and social experience all rolled into one.
We've definitely just scratched the surface of this whole yakiniku world.
We have. There's still so much more to explore.
I can't wait. We're back and ready for more yakiniku adventures.
Our virtual butcher shop tour continues.
We've covered some amazing cuts already, from the rump to the shoulder, and even ventured into the world of offal.
Where should we head next?
I'm feeling a bit lost in the anatomy of a cow now.
How about we focus on the chuck roll?
Chuck roll. Oh yeah. Isn't that where some of those beautiful marbled steaks come from?
Absolutely. The chuck roll is a treasure trove of flavor, and there are a few cuts within this section that are especially prized for yakiniku.
Like what?
Well, there's one called kaminomi. It's a smaller cut, but it packs a serious punch in terms of flavor.
Kaminomi. That's a new one for me. What makes it so special?
It's known for being both incredibly flavorful and surprisingly tender.
Okay, so rich flavor and melt-in-your-mouth texture. Got it. What else is hiding in the chuck roll?
Right next to the kaminomi, you'll find another gem called sankakubara.
Sankakubara. What does that even mean?
It translates to triangle brisket.
Triangle brisket. What's triangular about it?
It literally has a triangular shape.
Oh.
And it's often considered the most premium part of the brisket.
Oh, I see. So we're talking top shelf brisket
Yeah,
here.
exactly. You might even see it labeled as Tokyo Karubi on some menus.
Tochokorubi. Oh yeah, I've definitely seen that before, but never really knew what it meant.
Think of it as a stamp of approval. It signifies that this particular kalbi cut is extra special.
Special in what way?
Top-notch, marbling, amazing flavor. It's like the VIP section of brisket.
Okay, Tokyo Karubi, the VIP of brisket. I like it. Now, speaking of kalbi, what exactly is it? I feel like I see that word on every yakiniku menu.
That's a great question. Kalbi is actually a general term that refers to various cuts from the rib area.
So when I see kalbi on a menu, it could be from any part of the ribs.
Pretty much. And that's what makes it so fun. There's a lot of variety in terms of flavor and texture.
So it's all about personal preference then.
Exactly. Some kalbi is fattier, some is leaner, some is more tender, some has more chew. It's really up to you.
Variety is the spice of life,
Yeah.
as they say. Okay, we've covered the chuck roll and kalbi. What other delicious cuts are hiding in the rib area?
We can't forget about the ribeye.
Ah, the ribeye. A classic for a reason.
It's known for its rich, marbling, juicy texture and intense beefy flavor.
It's like the king of the grill.
And within the ribeye itself, there's a special section called the ribeye cap that's even more prized.
Ribeye cap. That sounds like next level indulgence.
It is. It's basically a layer of muscle that sits right on top of the ribeye and has an insane amount of marbling.
So it's like the creme de la creme of the ribeye.
You could say that. It's like butter in your mouth.
Okay, let's see. We started in the rump, ventured into the world of offal, explored the chuck roll, and now we're in ribeye territory. Is there any part of the cow we haven't covered yet?
There's one more section that's definitely worth mentioning, the loin.
The loin. We already talked about sirloin though, right?
We did, but there's another cut from the loin that's super popular for yakiniku, the tenderloin.
Ah, the tenderloin. Always a crowd pleaser.
It's known for its delicate flavor and melt-in-your-mouth texture.
It's definitely a special occasion kind of meat.
It is considered a delicacy. And did you know that the tenderloin is actually a pretty small muscle? It only makes up about 3% of the entire cow.
Wow, 3%. That's tiny. No wonder it's usually a bit more expensive.
Exactly. It's a rare cut. And because it's so lean and delicate, it's important to cook it properly.
Don't want to overcook that tenderloin.
Not at all. You want it tender and juicy, not tough and chewy.
We've covered a lot of ground in our virtual butcher shop tour. From the rump to the loin, uncovering a whole spectrum of flavors and textures.
We've still got a few more cuts to explore.
Bring it on. I'm ready for more. Okay, so we've explored everything from rump to loin.
And even dove into the world of offal.
It's amazing how much variety there is in just one cow.
Isn't it? And we're not done yet.
Oh, there's more.
There are a couple more cuts I think you'll find interesting.
All right, lay it on me. My mental butcher shop notepad is ready.
Well, we talked about Mino, the first stomach, but there's another stomach that's often featured in yakiniku, the komasum, or senmai in Japanese.
Senmai. I've seen that on menus, but I've always been a little intimidated by it. What is it exactly?
It's the third stomach of the cow. and it has this really unique honeycomb-like appearance. Yeah, and it's known for having a slightly crunchy texture when grilled.
So it's not as melt in your mouth as some of the other cuts we've talked about.
It's definitely a different experience, but in terms of flavor, senmai is actually quite mild and clean tasting.
Oh, interesting. So it's kind of like a palate cleanser.
You could say that. It's
Yeah.
a nice way to break up the richness of some of the other cuts.
Okay, senmai the palate cleanser.
Got it.
And speaking of palate cleansers, we can't forget about the tongue, or tan as it's called in Japanese.
Ah, yes, the tongue. A true yakiniku delicacy.
I'll admit I haven't tried it yet. It's one of those things that sounds a little intimidating.
I understand, but it's incredibly delicious. Different parts of the tongue have different textures and flavors. Yeah. For example, the tanmoto, or tongue root, is known for being really tender and flavorful.
What about the tip of the tongue?
The tansaki is leaner and has a bit more bite to it.
So it's like a tongue buffet. You could have a whole tasting menu just from the different parts of the tongue.
Exactly. And the article also mentioned a cut called tanshita, which is the underside of the tongue.
The underside.
Yeah, apparently it's super fatty and flavorful.
Okay, that one's going on my list of things to try. Now, before we get too lost in the world of tongue, there's one more cut. I'm curious about liver.
Liver, or rabo in Japanese, is definitely a polarizing cut.
I can imagine. Some people love it, some people hate it.
Exactly. But the article describes it as having an almost creamy texture when grilled.
Creamy.
Yeah, and they actually referred to it as the red jewel of yakiniku.
Red jewel. That's pretty poetic.
It is. It makes you think about the visual appeal of yakiniku, too.
Right, it's not just about the taste. It's about the whole experience. The sizzle, the aroma, the way the food looks.
Exactly. It's a feast for all the senses.
And it's such a social experience, too.
Absolutely. Grilling and sharing food with friends, it's what yakiniku is all about.
So as we wrap up our yakiniku deep dive, I have to ask, if you could design the ultimate yakiniku tasting menu, what would be on it?
That's a tough one. There are so many amazing cuts to choose from.
I know, right? It's like trying to pick your favorite child.
Okay, let's see. I think I'd start with something lean and flavorful like the ramp. Then we'd move on to something rich and marbled like the zabuton or maybe some sankakubara.
Definitely need some misuji in there.
Of course, can't forget about the misuji. And then for our little adventure, we'd have some mino sand and marucho.
And maybe some tongue for the grand finale.
Absolutely. A tasting of different tongue cuts. And maybe even some liver for truly adventurous.
That sounds like an epic yakiniku feast.
It would be a celebration of all things yakiniku.
Well, I have to say, I feel like a yakiniku expert now.
That's the power of a good deep dive.
Thanks to this Brutus magazine article, we've unlocked a whole new level of appreciation for Japanese barbecue.
It's been a pleasure exploring the world of yakiniku with you.
That's it for this episode of The Deep Dive. We hope you enjoyed our sizzling exploration of yakiniku. Until next time, happy grilling.